One. Hello, welcome to the Psycoded Podcast. This is Psycoded, your friend. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, not Snapchat. No, I don't use Threads, but you can find me on Instagram and Snapchat the most. You can also find my profile on LinkedIn. Um, yeah. So this podcast series and this podcast is going to be about me asking a bunch of questions to people that I've worked closely with, that I am working closely with, or people in general from the tech industry, from software development firms. And we are going to navigate about questions in their lives and how they got into the industry and what are their future plans or what are they currently working on. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest for the night. Lucas, hi, how are you?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thanks, Tushar, for the opportunity.
I really appreciate you joining and becoming the first guest on my podcast. And yeah, all right. So let's just get right into it. Lucas, uh, we know each other. We work in the same organization, but to the audience who may not know, could you please introduce yourself and tell us all about where you grew up, what's your education, what has been your background?
Sure, thanks, Tushar. So I'm Lucas. I'm a mobile engineer. I'm particularly excited about everything that is mobile. I started my career with iOS development, native development, and then switch for a bit to Android development. Now I'm doing React Native, but always mobile technologies, which is my kind of my passion. I'm a mobile engineer at the same company as Tushar at Whitespectre. It's a completely remote organization. So in my case, I'm living in Argentina. Tushar is from
Romania.
India.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have people all around the globe. So it's amazing. And we work with clients also from all around the world. I live in Argentina, but not in the capital city. I'm living in Cordoba, which is kind of it's another big city as well, but not the capital. And we also have other
good football team.
co-workers.
You guys have a good football team. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I grew up here and lived my whole life near my friends and family in Cordoba. So being able to work remotely with people from all around the world, I consider it a privilege. It's amazing. And I had the opportunity to meet people from different cultures, from different countries, with different ideas and everything, without moving from the comfort of my home. So that's something that I consider a privilege. It's probably more common these days after the pandemics, but back in the day when I started working remotely about 10 years ago, it wasn't something that common, and everyone was looking at me quite odd because it wasn't the common thing around. I also had I would say I've been lucky because I was able to study in my local university, which was like 10 blocks from my house.
Wow.
And that conveniently is one of the best in Latin America. So that was also a privilege. So I consider myself a lucky person, let's say. I have a degree in computer engineering, which is, for those that don't know, computer engineering is more focused on the electronics part, in the digital electronics part. I started during university, I was doing a lot of embedded systems, hardware development, hardware design, and things like that. But then I switched to the software side of things and software engineering pretty early in my career because I didn't like too much to deal with hardware components. And that's something. One of the things that limited me was that in Argentina it's pretty difficult to get components if you're not an organization, if you're not an importer or something like that. So it's pretty hard to be on top of the game if you're not a big corporation. So there is the hardware industry is not very well developed here in Argentina.
Right.
Or actually, it wasn't when I started my career. It is a bit better now.
Of course. That time, as time moves on, things get better. every country's economy typically it grows. So of course there'll be more opportunities now as to when you started. Just a quick side segue into I think my audience, people that would be watching or listening to this, might probably not know the current weather and the current climate in Argentina in particular, because this will be something new. I think this will be something new to the audience here in let's say Asia or in Indian subcontinent. Could you tell us what the temperature is at this moment? We are in September. We are in the middle of September. What's the temperature there in Argentina?
Sure. I usually like to joke about that because every time that someone asks me that, at least my coworkers, which are all in the North Hemisphere, and also all my clients are in the North Hemisphere. So everyone that I work with are pretty much in the North Hemisphere. So I usually say that whatever you are feeling now, just think the opposite. It's when you're super cold, we're super hot. It's the summers here are we have a lot of humidity, which is really bad for me. And then during winters, it's super dry and very cold. We don't have snow. We don't have pretty bad rains, tornadoes, or anything like that. So we don't have like extreme weather. But it's totally the opposite to the Northern Hemisphere all the year.
No, absolutely. So I think it's actually winter time, and it has been winter time for a month or so in Argentina, in where you at. It's been winter, so usually it's what I when I've been conversing with other people from Latin America within Whitespectre. So I was also surprised for the first time. Like it's new to a certain part of the population, that how could there be winters when there is, like, we are having either summers or monsoon around this time. So it's a pretty unique matchup. Yeah, sure. I'd move on to the next one. So as you said, you have a decade of experience in software engineering, right? You come from a computer engineering background, which was primarily focused on hardware, but you kind of pivoted to the software side of things. So I just wanted to know if what has your been overall experience of a decade in the industry. I think it's a decade. If there's any funny or interesting anecdotal story that you might want to share with the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I started my career like 12 years ago. Yeah, about 12 years ago so far. And I started during my last year at university. It's well in our industry, it's pretty common to find a job before you actually get the degree.
Right.
And
Happened same with me.
unfortunately,
Happened same.
yeah. And unfortunately, that sorry, that's the reason why a lot of people doesn't complete their degrees. They just get a good job and they start their careers and they never complete the degree. And I'm saying unfortunately because in some companies or some jobs or for some specific things, you are required to have the degree, and well, a lot of people doesn't have it. To be honest, to this day, I don't understand why, but a lot of companies, they require you to have a degree before they actually consider you for hiring. It is what it is. It's not ideal, but it
Yeah,
is what it is.
I also started like that. I was in the final semester of my engineering, so I got a job, but it was like they wanted to keep me on as on a stipend on a not so permanent role. But when I had so the contract was, when I graduate, I'll be moved to a permanent role within the organization. So yeah, it's fairly common here in India, and also maybe in the subcontinent, that to become a full-time worker in specifically in the software industry, you need to have completed a degree. So yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but during all my career, I've been involved in pretty much all kind of projects, or not all kind, but many kinds. And I even had my own consultancy company, sorry, for a few years. I had this startup, but I was part of the 90% of startups that fail. It was also pretty similar to a software factory. We were a team of 5 people. And well, that's as many of the software factories, we failed to get new clients and keep the business going. So we ended up after 3 years of operations.
Right.
I the projects that I enjoy the most are the ones that involve interaction with multiple parts of a system, like a hardware component, well, backend, some complicated tasks like cryptography and such things. So I don't like to use the cliche word. I like challenges, but it's actually what I
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
So
yeah. It keeps us motivated. It keeps us into the line that we need to be challenged to be able to be feel to feel fulfilled in what we do. That's for sure. I noticed you said that you were in the startup circle. You opened a consultancy. And for you ran it for 3 years, correct? Yeah.
yeah, that's correct.
Right. So on that note, what would be of course, I think there are no learnings without failures. So, what would you say are the top three things that you learned from that part of your life in working or doing startup and working as a consultancy? What would be your top three things?
So the first thing I learned is that it doesn't matter what you do, you must have clients, you must have a market. Because if you don't have that, you can raise funds, you can get friends helping you for free or running the startup with you for free without a salary or anything, with no costs. But if you don't find long-term clients and long-term businesses, it's impossible to survive. The second thing, which was what the most impactful thing, I would say, is that having your own startup is fulfilling in the sense that you're doing your own thing and you have a lot of room to grow. But you have to choose what you want, because if you want to grow and have a successful startup, you will certainly have to work a lot of extra time and a lot of times during the weekends, and you will have to leave other stuff aside, like probably your family or career or something. So it's a sacrifice,
It is a big sacrifice for
as
sure.
many says.
Yeah.
Of course, you can grow a lot, but it doesn't always mean that you will be successful and you'll gotta have a better income than if you find a good job with a salary that you just work like 8 hours a day. So whatever you choose is fine. I got some employees that told to me, look, I have a family, I have friends, I really enjoy my life, and work is not 100% of my life. So I just want a good salary and that's it. I don't want to be part of working extra time or doing extra effort to get something successful in the future, right?
Absolutely.
So the very definition of success is personal, I would say. And the third thing that I learned from a startup experience, I'm not. So in this case, I was involved as a founder, but I also had some other experiences working with startups as a service provider. Some of our clients were startups, and also some of our current clients are actually startups.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing for startups, I would say, is to keep the costs low.
Operation
So
costs. Yeah.
operation costs,
Right.
keep them as low as possible. So we got a lot of people that came with a fantasy world that they wanted to build.
Mm-hmm.
We built it, and then they didn't find market fit, so they didn't survive. With a really cheap MVP, you can test your market. You can test if you actually have enough people interested in your product, and then see if you're willing to invest more in that product.
Mm-hmm.
But usually starting with a very simple MVP or a very simple idea that let you test the market is the best way to go.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think there are a lot of key takeaways, key learnings from your learning, and anybody, including myself, who's interested can also learn. So you can also become wise from other people's wisdom and their life experiences for sure. Yeah. So what is the one piece of advice that you would like to give to someone, a young person who's just out of university or not even graduated? Because uh, times have changed. Youth generally don't see graduation, university as the only source that you can, get into the workforce of any country that you are in. So, what would be your one piece of advice to the youth of today to that want to enter in the tech industry, that want to enter in software engineering? And yeah.
Well, I would like to give a piece of advice that I would have liked to have by myself in my early beginnings. But if I have to choose only one piece of advice, it would be to start reading as early as you can. Uh, and with that, I mean, read anything, read articles, read books, read anything, but keep your curiosity alive and always try to learn something new. Unfortunately, I started reading too late in my life, and I regret about that. And preferably, if you can, I know it's more effort, but preferably read books. Not because books are better or they are academic, let's say, but in general, writing a book requires a lot of effort, and the people that is writing a book and the most successful ones or the more acknowledged ones are books that are written by people that dominates a subject and they have a lot of valuable knowledge to share. So they usually write a lot of articles, do a lot of presentations. They usually teach in universities and whatever, and then they put all that together into a book that they compile for the people. So usually books are the more curated source to learn.
Yeah.
And for sure, there are a few articles if you want to learn, like, I don't know, how to integrate a service into your application, or if you want to do something quick and easy, but they will never have the quality of a good book. And the other piece of advice or a phrase that I read is that we all like to read. It's just that not everyone found what they like to read yet. So I found it pretty late in my
Everyone
career,
likes to read,
but not everyone found what they like to read yet.
that's actually quite interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody does like to read, but not a lot of people know what they like to read. So
exactly.
yeah,
So you
most
just
of,
have to try.
most of the
So I
reading is driven through social media. Through social media, whatever book is one influencer reading, people will flock into reading that book from this to the other to the other. Um, but that's a very interesting take. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it happened to me that it's like a chain, right? I usually read books about technical stuff, which you have to put a lot of mind effort, understand all the mathematics and all the theory behind it, and it was exhausting. So I really didn't enjoy reading books. Um, and then you read a novel and you find it interesting, and then it's easier to read that technical book. You don't know why, but you start training your brain and getting some practice on reading, and then it's easier to read a book, and it's easier to read an article, and easier to understand a documentation and everything. So having that practice of reading, it's amazing. It's an amazing tool.
No, I agree. I agree. And a personal quote from my own father who says, if you want to know the world, read. And if you want to know yourself, write. So
Yeah.
that's what he's always taught me. I used to have a very good reading habit. My father still has it. He can finish up a book. But he's a very political person. He has his political interests a lot. Um, but yeah, sure. I think everyone, including myself, I would recommend to any person that is young to find more about the world. Read. Yeah. Well, I think those were my questions for you today, Lucas. Before we end, um, tell the people where can they find you. Plug in whatever you want. Go ahead.
Uh, Sure. So you can find me in LinkedIn, in Stack Overflow, GitHub. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, X and Threads, but I'm not active on any of those social networks. I'm just there to, read news and things like that, watch memes, things like that. So not super active, but I'm quite active in LinkedIn and Stack Overflow mainly. So wherever you look at me, just search for Lucas LT89.
Lucas
I'll be there.
LT89.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. It's been great talking to you, Lucas. It's been really great talking to you. I look forward to, hoping that we can work together closely in the same project or in the same product someday. But yeah, cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, and the audience, for more such content, follow me on Instagram at Psycoded. Follow me on Twitter at I am Psycoded. And yeah, those are the two places you can find me. I talk about fitness, I talk about tech, as I did with Lucas, and then I also talk about finance. So if you're interested in any of those things, just log in. Thank you, Lucas. This was smashing.
Thanks, Tushar. Thanks for the invitation.